Okay.
Hello, this is Dr. Sarah, Habits for Health. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to be joined by this beautiful and special woman, Natalie. So Natalie is a very, very accomplished dietitian and nutritionist. She's very, very clever. She's done lots of things for lots of different people and been involved with lots of things, but I'm going to let her tell you what she's about. And then we're going to jump into some of these amazing questions that people have asked, which I thought were actually brilliant. So Nat, could you please tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes, I can. I'll stick to professional related things, or we'll be here all day. So as you've just said, I trained as a dietitian and nutritionist, and have also done further studies in naturopathy and yoga instructing and personal training. And I guess a lot of my passion lies in holistic health, particularly with a clinical focus around thyroid health, hormone health, and gut health, which really just comes to beautifully support us as a whole, because it's really those three things that influence everything in how we feel, what our mood is like, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm a huge advocate for also very much mind-body medicine. I think that too often we separate the two, and it's really not separate. It's everything touches everything, as I always tell my clients. And so that's a little bit about me. I run one-to-one consultations. I have a few programs. I run a podcast called the Holistic Health Podcast. And that's probably what I spend most of my days doing.
Yeah. Amazing. See, there's a reason why we get on so well.
That's it. We do.
That's so great, Nat. I remember when we met together up on the Gold Coast that one time, and we started chatting, and just there was this amazing synergy, and we were like, we have to connect again.
Yes. How have we just met, and why is dinner over already?
I know. It's just too quick. But I'm so excited to have you on here, and maybe even moving forward to be able to do some things together. Like I've had a great chat with BJ, the dentist, the functional dentist, and it's so great to be in this space, to be connecting with other practitioners and clinicians who are really more focused around functional and holistic health. Because I feel like it's the best way to support people, really, because there's no one pill that's going to fix everything. So, all right, we had a list of questions. So I was really impressed by everyone's interaction with the questions. So I think the main things are really around, there's a few questions around thyroid and being on thyroxine, about iron deficiency, but how about we just start first? So around, how do you manage iron deficiency and gut health?
Okay, so very much with iron deficiency, my first port of call is going, well, has the iron deficiency been assessed correctly? Because there's a right and a wrong way to test iron and to interpret iron results. And the mistake that happens a lot is that tests are done incorrectly, or they're only looking at one marker when we're interpreting iron studies. So make sure it's being tested properly and interpreted properly. Let's make the assumption for the sake of this conversation that it has, and there is an iron deficiency there. We then want to go, well, why are you iron deficient? The most common reasons that I see are heavy periods, like heavy menstrual cycles, inadequate intake, or there is some kind of gut issue that is impeding the absorption of iron. So we obviously want to treat the root cause as to, like in terms to get to the end solution. The other thing to consider in this is when you are going to correct iron, the first place we want to go to is food as medicine. So making sure that you're consuming things that are rich in iron, and the best sources of iron are always going to be animal-based products, because it contains what's called heme iron, which is better absorbed by the body. So things like red meat, chicken, eggs, and seafood are going to be, and pork are the most iron rich and easily to be absorbed. And then let's say that you're doing all that and you're still iron deficient, then we want to look at supplementation. But the form of supplementation matters. So working with a practitioner to figure out the right form for you, and also taking iron every second day as opposed to every day is actually better absorbed than if you just take a lot of it every day, and making sure that you're not having your iron supplement with other minerals. So if you're taking a magnesium or a zinc, taking it away from that, and also avoiding having tea or coffee around the time you take your iron supplement, because it can inhibit the absorption of that.
Oh, wow. Interesting. And is there, because I remember reading somewhere a while ago that also vitamin C increases the absorption of iron. Is that correct? Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, it does. And sometimes that's suitable for people in terms of vitamin C, and sometimes it's not. If you've got gut issues, I actually prefer to use iron that has something called lactoferrin in it, which
Yep.
helps with the absorption,
Okay.
but has lesser, is, I guess, a better choice for someone with gut issues. Other
Yep.
things that can help with iron absorption as well are things like vitamin A, prebiotics, so that's fiber, and in particular there's a fiber called GOS, or galacto-oligosaccharides, which you can get in powder form, that also can help make iron better tolerated as well, and not have a negative impact on your gut bacteria. So there's lots of things to
Wow.
consider, and that's where, yeah, thinking about me as an individual, what do I need is quite important. But if all you take away from it is getting to the root cause of why it's low, food as medicine first, and then alternate day dosing for iron, then you're already way ahead of the curve.
I love it. That's so good. You're so clever, Nat.
Thanks, Sarah.
um, and all right. Now, Anita asked how to attain and maintain good gut health with no active thyroid, or if you're on thyroxine.
Yeah, okay. So a couple of things here I would consider is making sure that the dose of thyroxine that you're on is appropriate for you, so that it's, because what can happen if you don't have enough thyroid hormone, and if you're on thyroid hormone replacement, part of where you're getting enough thyroid hormone is from thyroxine. If your dose is incorrect and you don't have enough, you're going to have, suffer from things like constipation, because thyroid hormone is responsible for moving things in your body, including your bowel motions. So that's step one, making sure that you're on the right dose for you. The other thing in terms of gut health, it doesn't differ too much in terms of if you're on thyroid medication or you're not. A lot of the things that we're doing for optimal gut health are very similar. So if we're just talking about optimizing it, not necessarily treating a disease or a disorder or an imbalance, then the things that you want to be doing is following an anti-inflammatory diet. So low in sugar, low in alcohol, not consuming things that you're personally intolerant to. So the most common ones that I would come across are gluten and dairy, and that they're probably the two most common. And then also making sure that you're avoiding industrial seed oils. So things like canola oil, peanut oil, all the yuck oils. Just stick to olive oil and, ghee or butter, or healthy animal fats, avocado, nut seeds, etc.
Amazing.
And then
I'm so on the same page with that.
Yeah. And then also just ensuring you're eating a variety of fruits and vegetables that are, available to you. Ideally eating in season, just because you get the most amount of nutrients, and just rotating through different ones. Some particularly, some other kind of gut health tips that you can do in order to help support your beneficial gut bacteria is have sources of resistant starch. So how you get that is cooked and cooled potatoes or sweet potatoes, cooked and cooled rice, cooked and cooled, organic oats, if that's something that you tolerate and is working for you. They're probably the top three. And then again, just variety, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, and making sure that when you're having things like grains in your diet or legumes, that you're properly preparing those. So what I mean by that is soaking them overnight in a bit of vinegar, like apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, so it helps to break it down. And only continuing to consume those if that's right for you, because sometimes it's not right for you. And usually if you're getting gut symptoms from things like legumes or certain fruits and vegetables, then we need to actually look at what might be imbalanced in your gut before those things will become beneficial for you again.
Yep. It's interesting when you talk about like legumes and things too, because I've noticed that's something that seems to be a common irritant for a lot of people, I think, because of the lectins and things in legumes. I mean, I personally don't eat a lot of legumes at all. Pretty much stick to like high fiber vegetables and things, which is fine for me. But for other people, it might be a lot easier. But I love the point where you said about even with grains and things, because I'm a huge advocate for staying away from processed grains and processed carbs in general, just because of the effect on the insulin, right? But so often, like sometimes you'll see like sprouted bread and stuff that's actually made from sprouted grains, or like the almond meal bread that we made the other week. To me, that's kind of what you're talking about, is actually preparing and using those grains properly, not just grabbing a processed pack of white bread that's been so highly processed. It has almost nil fiber and no nutritional value. So that's a really good point. Thank you, with the whole fiber thing. And I think, like real food has fiber, right? And that's the whole point. You're feeding those bacteria so that, and then you get the short chain fatty acids, which then have all those effects. So that's so great. I like it. Just great, when it's all synergistic, and I'm like, it's working.
And I would also just add to that, like mindful eating, because you're not what you eat, you're what you digest. And so I think a chronic problem in our society is that we're eating when we're in a rush, we're eating when we're highly emotional, we're eating on the go. And, it's no wonder that so many people feel bloated and uncomfortable and unsettled in their tummy. It's not the only reason why those symptoms can come up. But if you're not sure whether you've got an issue with, with something more than just non-mindful eating, then the first place to start is just when you eat, just eat, and, take a moment to ground yourself before you have your meal. So it might look like just a deep belly breath, like a diaphragmatic breath. So in through your nose, out through your mouth, with trying to breathe into your belly as opposed to your chest, to just ground yourself and acknowledge, actually, I'm starting to eat. Chewing your food well, not just like chew, swallow, but actually a good like 20 chews and then swallow. That can actually make such a big difference.
Yeah, that's I feel like when you're talking about that, it's almost like when I watch my dogs eat, right? They're just like they just waft it down. I think, oh my goodness. But then they just go off and they just lie there for hours, right? But we don't do that. We're often off to the next thing, or we're busy, or we're stressing. And I find stress is a really big issue, because that the whole vagus nerve pretty much gets switched off, and then everyone's just basically trying to digest their food whilst they're stressing about what's going to happen that night or the next day or at work. And so it's almost like practicing being in the moment and just being in that moment, and just enjoying that moment for what it is. So that's great. Okay. So Alex was asking, is it possible to get off thyroxine if you are on it, like via nutritional supplements like that?
Yeah, great question, and one I get asked a lot. And
I bet you do.
The answer to that is it very much depends. So it depends. So in the process of Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune version of an underactive thyroid, that is the reason why most people are taking thyroid hormone replacement. Now, in that process, the immune system is, I guess, attacking the thyroid and the thyroid gland itself. And as that autoimmune process is happening, there is damage done to the thyroid gland. And so depending on how long that autoimmune process has been going on for, and therefore how much functionality the thyroid gland has lost during that time, will depend will kind of dictate whether or not we're able to have you come off thyroid hormone replacement and still be able to make enough thyroid hormone on your own. So it is possible, but not for everyone. And in terms of going about that process, you definitely want support in it, because we want to be making sure that there are enough nutrients in your diet to create thyroid hormones in the first place, and that we're doing what we can to actually, slow down or stop the autoimmune process that is happening in the background, so that we maintain the function of the thyroid gland that is still there. Now, in saying that, one thing that I'm often telling people, and it is that, thyroid hormone replacement is not the worst kind of drug or medication you could take. So not to feel guilty or bad or like you failed if in your toolkit, in the context of holistic health, a little bit of thyroid hormone replacement is necessary in order to allow you to have your health. It is identical to what we make in our body. So it's not like we're putting something in there that's completely altering our function. I fully support people having the aim to come off it if that's available to them, but not to feel guilty if it's not. And also recognizing that thyroid hormone replacement does not actually treat all people's thyroid issues. All it's doing is going, here is an extra top up of what your body is not able to make in the moment. It does not address the underlying autoimmune condition that's lingering in the background there that's driving the issue. It does not guarantee that those thyroid hormones are converting into their usable form, and it doesn't guarantee that those thyroid hormones are getting into the cell where they need to be in order to make you feel like you have enough thyroid hormone. So that's where we need to look at things, zoom out and look at things holistically and go, that's part of the solution for some people. But if you're on thyroid hormone replacement and you're still experiencing signs of an underactive thyroid, then it may not be that your medication dose is wrong. It may be that you're not converting the thyroid hormones properly, or that they're not able to get into the cell where they need to be. And therefore we need to address those problems.
Yeah. What sorts of things would stop the thyroid hormone getting into the cell?
Yeah. So it very much comes down to stress in the body. And when I say stress, I don't just mean, oh, there's traffic and someone's just cut me off and I'm stressed about it. And I don't just mean like emotional based stress. That is one, absolutely. If you are in a season of life that's very stressful, if you have trauma that has been unprocessed and undealt with, then that is another stress. If you are significantly overweight, then the stress, that the inflammation from carrying excess body weight is also a stress on your system. If you are eating a refined carbohydrate diet, or you are eating a lot of foods that are not, natural, essentially, as we were talking about before, like you really want to be eating an anti-inflammatory diet. Or if you're being exposed to a lot of environmental toxins, so that could be mold if you're living in a home that has mold damage or water damage. It could be if you're still using a lot of conventional cleaning and personal care products. It could be if you are exposed to industrial chemicals through the work that you're doing. It could be if you have a mouthful of amalgam fillings that have a lot of mercury that potentially are contributing to that. So it's stress in the broader sense of the word, rather than just feeling, oh my God, I'm stressed. And it won't show up on blood tests. So that's something to know, is that when we're measuring thyroid hormones in blood tests, we're measuring what is happening at in the serum. So in your blood, what are the thyroid hormones floating around there? And it's a reflection of what's happening at a brain level. But it doesn't tell us what's getting into the cell. That's where our symptoms and how we feel are so important and should never be dismissed or ghosted. Your body best.
I love that, actually. And it's I think that's so important, because so often, the big thing when we do pathology tests and things, like a classic one is someone will be insulin resistant, but all their bloods, like their glucose, is technically within range, but they're already feeling crappy. They're already getting a big belly. They're already tired. They're fatigued. They've got brain fog. And so my thought is, and I keep telling people, well, listen to your body. Your body is telling you. And I know I harp on it in the group, but that whole thing, like you're saying, it's the same thing like with mitochondria, right? So if the mitochondria are not working properly, like for example, fructose inhibits some enzymes on the mitochondria that actually shuttle fatty acids in. So if you're having that high processed diet, high sugar diet, your mitochondria can't process energy. And like you were saying, so you actually can't use your thyroid hormone properly anyway. So and that you can't pick up on a blood test either. So it's like understanding that. And I think just going back to almost just trusting that your body knows the answers, like you and nature often has the answers. And not putting all that junk and processed things into your body. Like, I mean, I've completely gone off most conventional skincare and stuff. And I literally just stick to coconut oil and those like raw products that it's literally just like almond oil and whatever. And it's sometimes even CBD oil and things like that. Because I just went, you know what, if I can't ingest it, I don't think I want to put it on my skin anymore. And it just made a huge difference. But I really got that whole idea again, that what you're putting on and in your body and surrounding your body with is going to have effect at a cellular level. So that's brilliant, Nat.
Yeah. And it's all these like little things that we do that make a difference. And if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, oh shit, I've got so much to do, don't let yourself be overwhelmed by it. I mean, easier said than done, but just go, what's the thing that I'm consuming the most and then I'll start with that change. So as an example, it might be that you're currently drinking tap water and we're all hopefully drinking at least a couple of liters of water a day. And that's something you're doing every day, constantly. So that's maybe where you go, okay, I'll look into filtered water. Or if you're currently, having a lot of processed food, like start with what you're doing the most of, because that's going to make most of the difference. And then just work your way through these other things. Maybe you start with, okay, I'm going to switch to a more natural based moisturizer next month, because that feels like the next step for me. It doesn't have to be a overnight change, like every little bit counts.
Because that's huge, right? And that's one of the things like I'm working on at the moment, is sort of like a course for parents to sort of make those sort of changes, but to do it over a period, not just to be like, oh hey, yes, you got to cut out everything, you got to start drinking filtered water, you got to do this, you got to exercise, it's like it's overwhelming, right? So I think just like you said, just making small changes, even if you just do it each week or each day or whatever works for you, and then celebrate that. Do you know what I mean? Like if you sort of go, holy crap, like, I'm just having filtered water now, like, yay me, pat on the back, woo. Rather than being like, oh, I have so much to do, you celebrate the steps, right? And you're like, I've done it, I did it. Like even the Russ, who is one of my friends who is going on this challenge, this mentorship challenge with me, like I've just sort of said to him, we just take this day by day. It is going to be hard because he's very used to having lots of processed food. So I'm like, when I gave him the list of things he couldn't have, he's like, what am I going to eat?
Yeah, that's a common one. What's left? Yeah.
Real food, amazing food. But it's interesting because when we actually went to the shops, we went to Woolies, and so much of those supermarkets are full of industrial and processed foods that are inflammatory. So it really takes a lot of preparation and motivation, and I think also just the like determination to go, right, I need to just stick with real food. I need to figure out what I'm going to use for snacks and cooking and things. And because it is hard, right? Like it's not like it's this super easy thing that you do, but it has all these amazing benefits. And that's, I guess, where we're like I wouldn't trade it for anything. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't trade my health for anything, because it's like they say, health is wealth, right? So if you can,
and it gets easier, right? Like I felt overwhelmed 100%. At the beginning, and now I go like, it's just part of my life. And so it's just kind of embracing the messy middle, knowing that you will get there and that what you do most of the time makes the biggest difference. And it's not people who are perfect that get results. It's people who are consistent. So just coming back to that constantly, because whether you beat yourself up or whether you celebrate yourself, you're going to get there anyway. But you're going to get there a lot happier, healthier, and just more balanced if you take the route of celebrating your small wins. And it creates that momentum, because when we celebrate something and we acknowledge it, it makes us want to do more of it.
Yeah, I love it. That's so great, Nat. That's so awesome. All right. Okay. I love this one from Lizzie. Lizzie says, how do we control cravings and binge eating associated with hormonal cycles?
Love this question. So a few layers to this one. I'd say that, okay, like if it's just, and I'm just going to answer this in context to help direct the question. So let's say that the binge eating or, the overeating is isolated to the premenstrual period. I would say that something that really, really helps is making sure that you are doing things to help regulate your blood sugar. Well, you should do this through your whole cycle, but really focusing in on this in that time where you feel more susceptible to overeating or binging. So what I mean by that is some of the tips that help to regulate blood sugar are making sure that you are having a high protein breakfast. So examples of things that are high in protein would be like eggs, maybe, some collagen powder incorporated into a meal if you can't manage to cook eggs or you're intolerant to them, or any kind of like leftover animal protein from the night before that you can incorporate with some veggies or anything like that. It might sound a bit odd to have that for breakfast when you're not used to it, but it can make a really
sounds amazing.
Yeah, or like a chia pudding that has a bit of collagen stirred through or something like that. So focusing on like high protein, high fiber meals throughout your day, and definitely particularly at breakfast, do not let that be a high carbohydrate or a high sugar meal. Also, not having coffee on an empty stomach. So if you're drinking coffee, having your coffee after food or with some healthy fats. Getting enough sleep is a big one, and kind of not having a lot of sugar through the day, and also eating your meal in the order of fiber first. So your veggies, like your non-starchy veggies first, then your protein on your plate. So that could be your eggs or salmon, tuna, meat, chicken, etc. And then having your starchy carbohydrates or your carbohydrates last. So they might be things like sweet potato or grains or legumes if you're eating them, or fruit. That actually allows your blood sugar to be a lot more balanced. You can also add apple cider vinegar to your meals, or have that just before your meal. And that's another thing that can really help. And what we're doing when we're stabilizing our blood sugar is we're avoiding like the dip. So when it dips, that's when you're more likely to feel like, just ravenous and hungry and just be wanting the high carb foods. And that just creates this roller coaster ride. Yep. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is listen to your body. So often in the second half of our cycle, our metabolic rate, very slightly, but still to a small degree, does increase. And that is partly why we feel a little bit more hungry. So it's because of our hormone progesterone and how it relates to thyroid. And so rather than trying to absolutely not allow yourself to adjust and recognize that you're a cyclical being if you are a menstruating female, actually go, you know what? I know that this is what my body is telling me. And so I'm going to make smart food choices instead of I'm just going to try and avoid doing this and then getting to a point where you're like, oh, can't do it anymore and end up in a binge cycle. So actually making space for and adjusting for that increased hunger and making blood sugar balancing decisions around that. And not going, if you know that you struggle with binge eating in that period of time, not going large amounts of time without food. So there is absolutely a place for smart intermittent fasting, but I don't believe that it serves people when they are trying to manage binge eating or getting on top of it. So I would say
probably not during PMS.
Having something to eat, like maybe having 3 beautiful, nice sized meals and maybe a snack or 2, depending on how early you start your day, but not trying to do that thing that a lot of people with binge eating do in terms of I'm just going to avoid eating for as long as possible, just in case I binge, because you actually do the opposite. You actually set yourself up for being more ravenous and more likely to binge than if you have a beautiful high protein breakfast, a lovely high protein lunch and dinner, and just, allow yourself to feel more balanced in that time. So, and stay hydrated as well as the other thing, because sometimes dehydration will cause you to seek out foods that are high in water for the water content rather than the food.
Yeah, that's great, Nat. What about because I often have collagen bone broth with breakfast because I love it. So I often have a cup of that, especially after a workout. Like I'll just have a cup of that with some eggs and some duck liver pate and stuff. But it's like I find that's really nourishing, and like a cup of that is lovely. But I'm full for hours after that. Like I have no desire to eat for hours, 5 hours or something after I've had like a high protein, high fat, like healthy fat. Because the other thing I found too, and I would love your opinion on this, like I find like high protein in it, if I then fill with healthy fats, it satiates you, and so you don't have this desire to go for carby foods because, for example, you have avocado, or like I had liver pate this morning, or cooking with healthy butter, or just making sure that you're getting enough healthy fats, because I think a lot of women still have this worry about having too much fat, or they think, oh well, fat makes you fat. And especially, when you're bloated in PMS and you're looking in the mirror and your stomach feels huge and you just feel like blah.
Totally.
But I think that and it is hard, right? Because then emotionally we're also affected by it. We're irritable and you just don't see yourself the same way.
No, totally.
But having those, I just sort of thought those healthy fats too, in my experience, makes a huge difference, because you feel like you're getting something really beautiful and nourishing and satiating. And it just, I find you don't crave the sweet stuff if you have that. So
absolutely. And the other thing I was going to say that I forgot to mention is there are certain herbs and nutrients that can help as well. So probably the two most common ones would be magnesium, can help with cravings, and also cinnamon. So perhaps adding some cinnamon to some of your meals for a little bit. There are other things that can help as well, but they're probably, I guess, the most common ones that are going to make a big difference. Or inositol is another supplement that can be added in. But I would say if I was going to start with something, it'd probably adding more cinnamon to my food, and maybe looking into whether or not a magnesium supplement would be supportive for you as well.
Amazing. That's so good, Nat. Now, okay. The really good question here from Jody is about optimizing hormones in menopause and losing weight during menopause. As she says, the battle is real. So I would love your opinion on that, Nat.
Yeah, I love this question, and something that comes up again a lot. So the way I think about this is, so there's two, I'm just going to cover a little, like, again, a bit of context. So there's perimenopause, which is that transition before you've gone 12 months without a cycle. And then once you've gone 12 months without a period, then you're in menopause. So I often find actually the trickiest part for women is that perimenopausal period, because your hormones are going up and down, things are changing. It's a time when thyroid issues can pop up as well. It's also a time when we're more susceptible to insulin resistance because our estrogen is changing, and that has a relationship to each other as well. Once you've entered into menopause, it's not that it, is easy or anything like that, but I just want to address her question. I think it's really about going and making sure that you've had thorough blood tests and that they've been interpreted properly. So checking for things like insulin resistance and thyroid issues to make sure that there's not something from that perspective that is driving the difficulty around establishing a healthy weight. Assuming there's not, the other thing that I would move into is, again, coming back to ensuring that you are following an anti-inflammatory diet, favoring proteins and fats, and using carbohydrates as a condiment in that period of time. Focusing on resistance training. So a lot of women avoid lifting weights or doing resistance type training because they think, oh, I'm going to get bulky or I'm going to get too muscular. But in that period of time, like particularly as we age, but really any time, the more like you can preserve, the more resistance training you can do in a sensible amount, you're going to be able to develop more muscle in a healthy way, not in a, I'm doing bodybuilding way, just a healthy way that changes the shape of your body that you're going to definitely like and feel good in. It also, the more muscle you have, the higher your metabolism is, because it takes more energy, I guess, to maintain that muscle. Mm-hmm. And it also means that you're going to manage your insulin better, your insulin and your blood sugar a lot better. And then I'd also say that if you're having any difficulties with sleep, then addressing those, because sometimes during that, again, like it kind of more happens in perimenopause, but in menopause, if you're having any difficulties sleeping, that's also going to affect your ability to lose weight. The other thing that I really see a lot is that sometimes women have, and I say women because we do it the most, in my experience, is that you've yo-yo dieted your whole life, or you've restricted and gone on these really low calorie diets for a long time and over exercised, and then you just can't seem to lose any more weight. And if that's you, then my recommendation is actually to put in some time healing your metabolism by doing what's called reverse dieting. It's probably a conversation for another time, but it's essentially gradually eating more food to allow your body to feel safe and for your metabolism to increase. So then you have a space to actually create a difference and to lose weight from that perspective, but not eating enough only works for a short period of time, and then it becomes something that's stopping you. So if that's not you, if you haven't been a yo-yo dieter and that's not the camp you're in, then just focusing on your quality of your food, as we've talked about already in this chat, checking in on insulin and thyroid function, making sure your sleep is on point, and adding in some resistance training is where I'd start. And if you're still struggling, then maybe working with someone one-to-one that can look a little bit deeper into, are there any other tweaks that need to be made for you, and not buying into the story that because you're a certain age, you can't change your body composition or achieve health, because it's not true. You absolutely can. It might just look different to what it did in your 20s or your 30s or even your 40s.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. And that's, I think also what you're saying about sort of with insulin resistance too, like it's such a problem throughout most of people's life at the moment, is that they're just having way too much insulin. But there was a really good article. I'll actually share it with you. I'll pop it in the group. That was also about insulin resistance in menopause, and how that it basically has a major issue for women trying to lose weight. So if they are insulin resistant, and again, inflammation can cause insulin resistance. So if you're eating a
Okay, we might just pause the recording. We've lost Sarah. We'll be back in a moment.
my daughters are going to be dropped off.
Hi. Okay, we're back.
Hello.
we just got locked out for a moment. However, let's
Right,
jump
we are
back
back.
straight back into where
We
we
are
were
back.
saying. So
That's-
what we left off with you saying to us that inflammation can cause insulin resistance, and that's why we want to make sure we're checking that if we're in, menopause and we're struggling to lose weight.
Yeah, awesome. Yes. So I think looking at what sort of foods that you're eating, and if they're like, some foods may not necessarily be inflammatory for some person, but they might be inflammatory for other people. So I think, again, listening to your body and about what I find one of the fastest ways to find if something's not working with you is often like just brain fog. Like if you eat something and then within about 10 or 20 minutes you start getting that fog, I just think that's a really good way to know if it's not sort of driving with you. So
Yeah.
but so just the last question, Nat, is Dale, I think probably a great question to kind of sum everything up. How do you get the right gut health for you personally as a person? So rather than just having the standard go-to, what's the best way to figure out what's right for you?
Well, I think there's two parts to this. That for the person who already has gut symptoms, so let's say constipation, bloating, or diarrhea or loose stools, indigestion, etc. I really think the fastest way to get that answer is to work with a practitioner that understands gut health to treat what is there, because often that involves food changes, herbal medicines, nutritional medicines, etc., to get you back to a state where we're back in balance, and then we're looking at gut optimization. From there, once you're in, maybe you're not symptomatic, but you just like, oh, I really want to make sure my gut health is the best it can be for me. I would say doing a anti-inflammatory diet, taking out the most common things that contribute to gut issues. So things like gluten and dairy, maybe taking out legumes and grains just for, a 30 to 60 day period, and then reintroducing them one at a time and seeing whether or not you get any symptoms is a good way to kind of find out. And then from there, just making sure that you're eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, maybe nuts and seeds as well, to get a variety of different fibers. And I mentioned some of those before as well. And taking it to the point where you feel good, not overdoing it either. Like, the reality is not everyone does well on astronomical amounts of fiber. Sometimes it's just a bit of an in-between amount. So I feel like if you've got gut issues, getting those treated and looked at from a holistic standpoint is step one. And then step two, if you haven't already done it in that process of working with someone, is to do an elimination and reintroduction to figure out, you as an individual, what do I not tolerate the most? And then also not overdoing things that we all shouldn't be overdoing if we want optimal gut health, like industrial seed oils, sugar, alcohol, or too much caffeine. Just keeping either those things out as much as possible or having them very rarely.
Yeah, amazing. That's so good. And I think the thing that I often think about, which is pretty much tying in what you're just saying, is like, you remove the things that are irritating or are going to damage the lining of the gut or the microbiome. You're adding in things that are then going to support and nourish your gut and protect the liver. So like sugar and processed carbs just going to dump on the liver. And then basically anything that's supporting that. So whether it's, collagen, bone broth, prebiotics, probiotics, that's how I tend to think of gut health. Like, to keep it simple, because I think it can get really complicated because there's so many amazing studies on it, and there's lots. Like, you look at all the different bacteria and stuff, but I think at the end of the day, keeping it simple is the easiest way to do it, and listening to your body and just going, what can I take out? What can I replace it with? And how can I best support it? So that's great, Nat. We might look at wrapping it up there, because I don't know how long we've been going for now, but I feel like we've covered a lot. So and I think there's a lot there for people to take in and take on board. And I just thank you so much, Nat, for your time, for coming on. If people want to follow you or find you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, probably two ways. So over on Instagram, my Instagram handle is Natalie.Douglas.
Yep.
And then you can kind of find everything you need from there. And then the other way would just be to follow my podcast. So it's called The Holistic Health Podcast, and you can find it on Spotify or all of your regular podcasting apps as well. And then my website is just nataliekdouglas.com. So between those three, I'm sure you'll be able to find anything that's useful that you might need to know about. And on my website as well, you can find some free gut, thyroid and hormone checking or screening quizzes as well, if you're just looking for a bit of a resource to get started with.
Amazing, Nat. Like, you're so clever and so wonderful. Thank you so much. It's just such a pleasure to have you and chat to you, and I'm sure everyone in the group will love you. So thank you. And maybe we can organize to do something again down the track. That would be great. But thank you so much for your time, Nat.
So welcome. Have a good day, everybody.